Hello and welcome back to The Distracted Gardener. I'm Charlie. I hope this episode finds you well. Just a little apology ahead of tonight's episode. I was very thankfully celebrated by my friends and family a couple times this weekend. It was my 37th birthday, so we were out for festivities. So if I'm a little bit slurry or more ummy than usual, I should say today, then I apologize for that. Today, we're going to be talking about In an Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden World Around Us by Ed Yong. The book is a deep dive into the different ways animals experience the world. Humans are exceedingly vision-focused, but what about bees? What about snakes? We're going to be talking about that today. Before we do, though, I want to say thanks to a number of you out there who responded with so much information to last week's episode. In that episode, if you haven't listened yet, we talked about the need for getting children interested in nature and in gardening. Since I'm very new to that type of education, I had asked for some ideas in that last episode. Twitter mutual Shannon shared a really simple and really fun sounding exercise where children use morning glories to make colored water. I asked my wife if she had done this when she was in elementary school, and she said that she had, and often the colored water that they had made from the morning glories they would use as a dye for clothing, or sometimes use it as like a watercolor paint. So I thought that seems like a really cool idea. So thank you to Shannon for sharing that. And then also Kevin O'Shea, who is a rock star in the sort of nature education space, also shared a ton of great ideas over on Twix. Upcycling old yogurt containers for growing beans and sunflowers, growing edibles directly inside the classroom so they'll always be in front of the kids when they're in class. So many things I hadn't really thought about. All this to say, I'm really grateful for the response. Not only did I get some ideas I can quickly put into practice from Shannon, Kevin, and others, but also got my own brain moving on implementing some of my own ideas and actually creating some of my own ideas, because I think I was sort of thinking very narrowly about the problem. But anyway, yeah, thank you to everyone out there who took the time out of your days to respond and give me some ideas. I don't want to wait any longer to hop into our main topic for the day, so I'll share updates on the veranda garden at the end of today's episode. So let's talk about An Immense World. I first heard about Ed Yong's An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us, through an episode of NPR's Fresh Air with Terry Gross. In it, Yong detailed the ways that different animals experience the world through different senses. I had heard about some of the interesting ways bees see the world, but Yong's work took things to a new, much deeper level. I was intrigued and picked up this book as a present to myself around Christmas 2023, so just about, what would that be? Not even 4 months ago. And it was sort of just added to a list of books I wanted, or that I had, that I needed to read, and I'm finally getting around to it now. But I wonder if you have ever consciously thought about the different ways you interact with the world around you. As I sit here recording the podcast, I hear a fan that I'm blowing onto my seedlings in the seeding tent to help them build strong stems. I can feel the light on my neck coming off the grow lights behind me that are sort of shining onto the cacti. I can feel the cold air of the room. I can feel a little bit of heat coming off some candles here next to me. And of course, I obviously see the computer screen in front of me. And I don't really smell it. Oh, well, maybe I smell a little bit of snoil. Maybe I smell a little bit of the soil coming from the grow tent. In Jung's book, I was introduced to the idea of Umwelt. Each kind of living thing experiences the world through a different set of lenses of varying strength. This sensory bubble, as Jung calls it, is called an Umwelt. Humans, of course, have 5 senses available to them most of the time. What I found fascinating is that the number of senses and their strength can vary extremely from species to species. Consider for a moment why we, as humans, eat things, right? This is very much at the top of my mind today because as I said, I was out for some celebrations today, and my mother-in-law took my wife and I to a place in Haksan-Ion, which is outside of Kanazawa City in Ishikawa Prefecture here in Japan. And there's a really great sushi shop there called Mori Mori Sushi that we went to. And anyway, it was fantastic. It was really, really great. And so, why we eat things and all that is sort of at the top of my mind. But anyway, of course, there is that whole, if we don't eat, we'll die part of course, why we eat. But think about why you eat what you eat. I have to imagine that a huge part of your dietary choices are based on what tastes good. So much of what we do in preparing our food is meant to enhance taste, right? That's why we add salt. That's why, that's why we add fats. That's why we do basically, a ton of the stuff that we do to meats, to foods, right? Like, other than to sanitize them, make them safe for consumption. A lot of the time, probably the biggest thing we're doing is making them, palatable or more palatable. Through this lens, I think it's understandable to assume that all animals must choose food in a similar way. I know that when I was in university, my girlfriend at the time, she had, or her sister had, we were all living together, and anyway, her sister had a cat, and the cat's name was Sydney, and the cat was quite morbidly obese. I remember just watching that cat go to town on a bowl of its, kitty kibble or whatever. And I was like, oh man, that must just be the most delicious kibble that has ever been made. But no, I'm after reading Young's book here, like I'm so taking stock of how I look at animals, I guess. And the reason for that is because snakes and many other animals apparently don't taste. Hey, for us, choosing what we want to eat is probably a matter of smell and taste, right? Like, if something doesn't smell good, probably we're not going to put it in our mouths most of the time, I think, right? But for snakes, it's apparently just about the smell. Consider, as Young lays out so expertly, that snakes can tell the difference between prey animals they've bitten and those they haven't. Those bitten by other species and those bitten by members of their own species. They do this only through their olfaction, right? Only through their sense of smell. And through the sense of smell, they can determine whether something is worth the effort to eat. And I think one of the things that was pointed out, like about this sense of taste, is that taste is basically like a last. It's like the last. It's the final check before it goes into your body, right? So, if something tastes bitter, for example, one of the things he was talking about, you may like spit it out because bitter is a good sign that it's not going to be good for you. But snakes and creatures like them that can sort of determine whether something is edible or not through sense just don't need taste. It's, it just becomes sort of a, what is that word that starts with an R? A redundant sense. Other animals, of course, share our sense of taste, but their bodies are equipped with differing tools with which they employ that sense. Catfish, apparently, are positively covered with taste receptors, meaning they can taste things with the skin on any part of their bodies. A number of insects taste simply by landing on something. Our friends, the bees, always work hard to gather pollen, accumulating it on hairs around their bodies. It never occurred to me, for whatever reason, that they might actually be able to taste that pollen. I guess the process was something like an if-then process. If there's a flower, then check for pollen. If there's pollen, collect. Right? Maybe it's because bees are, they're called drones or whatever. So I thought it was kind of like a simple, basically a simple computer algorithm maybe that they were following. But bees apparently land on a flower and are able to taste its nectar through their legs, which, is pretty cool. I can't taste anything through my legs, so. As gardeners, we are, of course, preoccupied with the health and activity of our pollinator friends, and this keeps us on the subject of bees. When you see a flower, what is it that you actually see? Right? For example, sunflowers, I see the giant stalks and beautiful flowers, and I often find myself wondering what it must have been like for those kids in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids to navigate a world of giant flora because I'm a man child. Bees, however, see sunflowers in a strikingly different way. To them, the flowers appear lightly colored on the outer edges and darkly colored in the middle. In a sense, sunflowers appear as bullseyes, directing bees where they might find forage. And obviously, we can see why for flowers like sunflowers and other flowers why they would want to direct bees to this area. Obviously, they will help pollinate the flower and help in the reproduction of the flower and help ensure the survival of that flower species. So far, we've been talking about variations on the senses that we have, but there are extra senses, at least from where we sit, that many animals possess. Consider a migratory bird. How does the bird know where to migrate to and from? Surely nobody is carrying an iPelican or whatever the avian equivalent of a smartphone is, loaded out with GPS tech. Instead, birds rely on their ability to sense the Earth's magnetic fields. This sense, magnetoreception, isn't just a bird thing. Salmon, birds, turtles, a range of animals have the sense and seem able to use it in a variety of ways. Some use it as sort of a waypoint checking system, right? They'll just sort of, they'll fly where they think they need to fly, and every now and then they use this system to be like, okay, well, I'm sort of like I'm on the right track, right? Like I'm this far south or whatever, and this magnetoreception allows them to check and make sure they're in the right place. On the other hand, other animals like sea turtles may use magnetoreception as a sort of built-in global positioning system that they can ping, for lack of a better word, to keep them on a given route or to check their relative positions in a global sense. There's so much, it seems, to talk about with this subject. I imagine my surprise and my interest is only going to grow deeper as I get deeper in the book. I have to admit that I'm not finished with it yet. But I was so excited by the ideas that I wanted to share them as soon as possible. I believe that having an interest in wildlife should go hand in hand with having an interest in gardening, as I think the two are inseparable. By better understanding the way other creatures see the world through their Umwelten, right, through their sensory bubbles, it seems likely that we can better provide for and protect them. There are a number of, I have to admit I haven't seen these studies yet exactly, but I think there is increasing concern that the way that we are, for example, using technology may in fact interfere, with some of the senses that animals have that we don't, or use in ways that we don't. For instance, this sense I just talked about a moment ago, this magnetoreception, may be being interfered with by things like Wi-Fi and other sort of these sort of broadband technologies, these technologies that are using microwaves. And of course, the world is just more and more filled with microwaves as more people have, smart everything, smartphones, smartwatch, smart, speakers, smart earphones, whatever the case may be. And so we're putting a lot of extra, what should we say, chatter, or maybe noise is a better way to put it. And there's an increasing worry, it seems, that maybe that will interfere with not only birds, but for the aforementioned sea turtles and other creatures that rely on magnetoreception for migration and therefore mating and things like that. And so we need to be aware of that, right? We may need to be more aware of that, I should say, as more studies on that are done. I think it also is interesting to understand how things like bees see, right? And I'm going to put a link to a really beautiful article over on National Geographic called "Pictures Capture the Invisible Glow of Flowers." This is the article itself is written by Asta Somvitjen Clausen. A million apologies for whatever butchering I did to the name, and it features photographs by Craig P. Burrows. And as the name implies, it just shows you what flowers look like in the UV spectrum, which is how they'd be seen by pollinators like bees. And I think maybe understanding how they're seen by it can help maybe for example, for you to choose flowers that look more attractive to bees or whatever other pollinator you're trying to attract. So it seems like it could be a useful thing to know. So I hope this brief chat about Ed Young's An Immense World has captured your curiosity as much as it has mine. And I hope it inspires you to learn more about the different things making their way through the world with us. I don't imagine this will be the last time that I'm talking about this, as maybe you'll have realized with how much I harp on the wonder that is Merlin Sheldrake's Entangled Life. I imagine I'll keep coming back to this and mentioning it a number of times, but so far it seems like something worth reading. So if you're looking for an interesting book in sort of the realm of biology and natural sciences, then by all means, this is a recommendation. I will provide a link to information about the book, as well as the article I mentioned just a few moments ago on National Geographic, down in the show notes. Before we sign off for the day, I want to talk about what's happening over here in the veranda garden. Well, unfortunately, I need to report that I'm dumb and I have made a very simple but costly error. I started my first wave of seeds on February 12th, almost a month before I'm recording this episode, and growth is incredibly slow. Now, why? Not because it's too cold or dry or whatever. My seedlings are in like a mini greenhouse or like a grow tent setup that has always produced vigorous seedlings over the past couple of years. No, the reason they're so slow is because the grow lights were too close, and so the seedlings got sunburn. About 70% of the seedlings burn. Most leaves turn to red or black color, meaning the plants can't photosynthesize, meaning they can't grow. A number of them seem to be recovering with what little viable leaf tissue they had left, but I decided last Friday to chalk the whole first wave of seeds up as a loss and just resow most of everything. If the stuff from the first wave rebounds, I will of course use those seedlings, but I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket. I feel really stupid about the whole thing because I do know better. And here's hoping that they'll recover and catch up now that the issue has been resolved. And it's a wasteful mistake because it costs seeds and, so yeah, so that was But anyway, now I'm never one to sign off on a bad note, so I will offer some good news from my perspective. The Mushroom Bucket project that I started a week and a half ago seems to be going really well. Like I said, started about a week and a half ago, which would put it at February 28th or so. And when I checked on the inside of it this morning, you could clearly see a ton of mycelium growth on the straw. Probably at the end of the week, I'll go to the next step of the process, which is opening the air holes in the side. They're currently covered by like surgical tape, which allows air in but doesn't let anything grow out of it. I'll probably open those up on the sides of the bucket and thereby giving the mushrooms a place to sort of fruit from. I think I maybe accelerated the process a little bit because it's supposed to take about 2 full weeks to get where it is now, apparently. But I think because the way my grow tent is set up is that of course the bottom is of the seedlings, and then there's in the middle of the grow tent is 2 lights, and then above that there's like a shelf that's just for if I want to put any like pots or something up there. But also that's where the used container that I turned into the mushroom bucket is sitting. And at night, the humidity in the grow tent gets up to like 75 or 80%. And of course it stays at nighttime, I think it's like 16 or 17 degrees. And then during the day, it's like 24 degrees or so. That's Celsius, by the way. So I think the humidity coupled with the warm temperature inside of that is really speeding the process along. So I'm hoping that, as I say, once I take that second step at the end of this week to move the bucket along, that maybe in like a week or two, maybe I'll actually start to see some fruiting bodies from what are oyster mushrooms, and I'll have something to harvest sooner than later. If you're interested to see how I built the bucket and the progress, I will be starting a mini series of blogs over on naturalfukui.com detailing how the whole thing goes, with the first post going live on Thursday, March 14th. There will also probably be pictures on Threads, Instagram, and Twitter, on all of which I use the handle naturalfukui. So thank you for listening. That's where we'll end it for today, and I hope you'll be back to listen again next week.